Hey, what's going on, everyone? And welcome to day 2 of our spring fly fishing festival. We have some really good stuff this tonight and tomorrow we're excited about. And we are kicking it off tonight with Brita Fordice of Rio Products. She is going to be tying a handful of really great flies that I'm excited to see and are going to be applicable for us here in Durango, especially if you're a streamer fisherman. And we got lots of good stuff that tonight, and then tomorrow 10 a.m. we are going to be meeting at Santa Rita Park to kick everything off. We have a couple different events going on. You can see, should have a link in our YouTube below in the description, that we have our, I can't even talk right now. We have our schedule going on there. And then also in the link, you're going to be able to sign up for some gift gear giveaways and grand prize of a guided trip with Tom Knopic, which will be tomorrow at the shop at 4 o'clock. But tomorrow we got Ross Kingsley. He's going to be doing some casting tips. Tom is going to be doing a presentation on mending. Rob from the shop will be talking about backcountry, secrets to the backcountry, which sounds pretty benign, but that's actually going to be a really cool clinic where he's going to be talking about finding a lot of the stuff we have up in the high country here in Colorado, where everyone's always asking, where do I catch these big cutthroat? He's not going to tell you where, but he's going to tell you how to do your own research and find them yourself. And then Scott Harkins is going to be talking about packing for an exotic trip. We're going to have gear demos. We're going to have lunch. We're going to have a bunch of different stuff, lots of rods to cast. So join us, and we are excited to have you guys tonight and tomorrow. Tonight, Brita, she is a great fly tyer, a guide, a instructor, and full-time fly designer for Rio Products. There's a lot of great stuff we have in the shop from Rio. Her and Patrick design a lot of that, and we're excited to have her join us. I'm going to turn this over to Brita, and feel free to ask questions in our chat, and let's rock. Good to go.
Awesome.
Oh, you're good. Someone's calling you.
All right. There we go. All right. So we're going to start off with tying a sculpin, and I'm going to go ahead and do this on a jig hook. The hook I'm using right now is the Airex. It's the 551 and a size 4. It's barbless. Whether or not you want a barbless hook, that's up to you. I don't really care, but that's what I'm using. So it's going to work good for me. So I'm going to go ahead and use, this is like fluorescent fire orange thread. Makes it so that you guys can see it better. It is a little smaller than I normally use, so hopefully I won't break it and embarrass myself in front of everyone. So I'm going to wrap the shank here. Cut off that excess. And this is going to be a extra small, no, this is actually a small size lead eye. I'm going to put that about a 1/4 of an inch back from that hook eye. If there's one thing that you will find out very quickly with me is that I'm really, really bad at guesstimating length and distance. So don't ever ask me for directions or how long something is. So I'm going to tie this in really well. Then I'm going to make sure that I didn't screw it up and it's not like all weird on me. So forgive me for a second there. There we go. And I promised Andy I wouldn't swear. So my best advice is always glue the crap out of it. When in doubt, glue the crap out of it. See, that was better.
Nice.
I've got some of the UV stuff because I'm going to hit it with that real quick instead of just standard glue because it's in front of me.
What UV is that?
This one is the Solaris.
Okay.
Solaris. I've heard it called everything. It's the bone dry one.
Okay.
You'll know if your lights need charging or if they're good or not when you use that because it should smoke.
Really?
Which I'm sure the fumes are fantastic.
Healthy.
Oh, yeah. All right. So those guys are in there pretty good, or as good as they need to be for a tying demo. That's not going to get fished right away. I'll probably lose it before I fish it. I have a big like junk drawer of flies that just thinks, oh, let's try this. And then they just end up in there and it's like the drawer of death for flies.
It's awesome.
And then I'll give them to someone when somebody begs me for something for a trip, and I'll be like, oh yeah, that's a reject, but they have no idea.
That's a good call, actually.
Yeah, it works out pretty good. So I'm going to use a rabbit strip. This one is a brown barred or black barred sand variant, I think. It looks pretty dark for that, but I don't care, and neither do the fish. So I don't know. I think that's the color of it. With my awesome gauging of length, I'm going to assume this is 2.5 inches long total. I have no idea. So I'm going to go ahead and tie that in. Since we want to add a little bit of bulk to the fly, it doesn't matter if you put the hide all the way up to those dumbbells on there. Okay. And tie it down. Remember, since this is going to fish upside down, you want to make sure that this is facing upside down too. Otherwise, it will look like a tarpon fly, and how they sometimes tie the tails weird and wrong for me personally. All right, so now that we've got that guy tied in, I'm gonna flip it over. And I'm going to add in a little bit of marabou just because I can, and it would give it a little bit more of a taper from the skinny tail to the head, because you want to have them a really, really teardrop shape when it's a sculpin. What I've done is I've prepped this piece of marabou. I've taken a lot of the fluff off the bottom of it, and then taken the top off as well, so that it kind of, when you put it together like this, it's just the perfect amount and the perfect shape, and you don't end up with that spine in there at all, and it just moves really nice. So I'm going to go ahead and add that to it and just tie it down. I'm not doing anything exciting with it. I'm not wrapping it fun, just tying it down so that it goes about 2/3 of the way down the tail. Normally, since I'm in a COVID-free environment, I would lick my fingers and then lick this, but it's kind of creepy and gross when I do it in front of people, so I'm not going to. I also have Diet Cokes, but I'm not going to do that either, because that would be even weirder. So it's not going to get licked. Hopefully this will stay back and it won't annoy me. All right. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some rubber legs. These are just the buggy nymph legs, and I'm going to tie them in a knot. It's 3 of them that I've got. They're pretty small legs, but I'm going to just do one overhand knot. And we're not tying a stonefly, don't worry. So I'm just doing an overhand knot, which, by the way, when you do this, you'll know very, very quickly if your legs are trashed or not. Because if they're old, they'll break when you do this. Once I've tied them in a knot, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to tie them in. The reason I like the knot is because when you tie down right in front of that knot that you've done, it kind of kicks them out a little bit for you. I'm going to do the same with the other ones.
Just for those who are wondering, this is going to be a pretty sweet fly for the animus, because there's a ton of sculpin in the animus. They're making a pretty big comeback since the 416 fire, so for those who want to catch a giant brown trout, they'll probably eat something like this right now.
Don't you guys get, usually in Washington, I know, whenever we have fires the year before, we end up with a big ant hatch that summer. I don't know if you guys do too.
It might have been. This was 416 was 2000 and shoot, someone remind me, 18 or 19. I mean, there's been a few good terrestrial days on the Animus since then. Nothing crazy, but I mean, we've seen a lot of, down on the San Juan especially, it seems like the year after that, though the fire didn't affect the San Juan, there was usually ants down there, but the ant fishing was even better.
Okay, I'm going to add my favorite thing ever. You'll look like a total nerd going and buying these little alligator clips that are hair clips for little girls that nobody should ever put in their kids' hair because they're hideous looking, but they're perfect for fly tying. There you go. So that's great for that. Every once in a while, they'll shoot across the room when you're trying to put them on or take them off of something. And that's okay also. So now I'm going to find something really quickly that is red, because we want to have a little bit of red on a sculpin. Sculpins always have those really obvious gills on them. So you want to add a little bit of red to the throat of them just to make sure that the gills are obvious. inhale some marabou here. So I'm going to go ahead and just take a little bit of marabou. I just stripped a little bit off here. I'm going to rip it. Remember, don't ever cut marabou or you look like you just started fly tying, which is fine too. Just don't do it again. So I just ripped off a little bit, and I'm going to let that extend about 1/2 inch to 3/4 of an inch behind where I tied it in. Cut off the excess with scissors that didn't really work to cut marabou, which doesn't say much about my scissors. All right, so now I am going to tie in the Lazy Man sculpin head, which is AKA a brush. This is just the EP minnow head brush. There's lots of different brushes you can use. I have to say these are worth it for this particular type of fly because it creates bulk, it pushes water, it doesn't collapse, and it gives it the perfect sculpin color. So it's a necessary evil to a degree, but then you'll see what I do afterwards that kind of makes me feel better about doing this and not right that it's just sculpin head. So I'm going to go ahead and tie this in. I'm going to tie down that marabou though, or clip it down so it's not driving me crazy too. The worst thing about using these brushes is that you will, every time without trying, you will end up cutting your thread with the wire.
Yep. So
you'll find that I end up folding it back a lot of times just to prevent that if possible when I'm done. So I tied that in. Now I'm going to flip it so my thread doesn't end up wanting to go off the head of the hook. And I'm going to fold this like I'm palmering it. So you're going to pretend that you're tying a steelhead fly and you're wrapping marabou or something similar. And I'm going to just wrap it up the shank all the way. I'm going to go over and in front of the eyes and do 2 wraps in front of the eyes as well. Now, once I get there, I'm going to kind of part this stuff, which is easier said than done, and tie it down. Now you got to watch it because it ends up being a sloppy tie down if you don't, because you have to then fold this wire somehow or wrap over it. So anticipate that you'll end up having to wrap up closer to the eye than you'd want to normally. But that hint of red actually makes it look kind of cool, so I don't really care. Now I'm going to go ahead and unclip that and pick out with my scissors. You could use a bodkin, but it seems like a tool that is just unnecessary for this project when you have scissors. So now I'm kind of picking out that head a little bit, and now I'm going to go ahead and whip finish, and then we'll do the final fun steps of this fly.
You're a fan of using red on or red thread, I should say.
I like it. I think it's a good hint, but that said, I don't fish Colorado enough to say that it would be an option for you guys. I tend to always make my flies sparser than a lot of people. So, and I prefer kind of that way. So if I think that it kind of adds excitement to it where I'm lacking in other areas. So now I'm going to turn it upside down, and I'm going to cut its throat, basically.
Nice.
I don't know why that was entertaining for me, but it was. So I'm going to cut that. So what it does is it basically shows that red gills on there really well. And then it also gives it a nice flat head. So now is the fun part, because before it wasn't fun at all. Now I'm going to put some eyes on this guy. And I've got a couple different sizes. I'm going to see which one works better. These are the living eyes in earth color. That's the color, or that's the size. These things, I go through more eyes than just about any human, I think, because I end up putting them on everything because so many fish, especially in the saltwater, hit because of the eyes.
Mm-hmm. Do you see that more up in the Sound or in your area?
Yeah. Yeah, and they, whenever there's a school of fish, that's how they tell them apart and pick one off and eat it.
Okay.
is by hitting the head and sucking in the rest. So they're pretty important, at least for saltwater fish.
For sure.
So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit it with a little bit of UV. I put my eyes right on the top there. It's hard to see that I have from where you're at, but I'll hold it up in a second here. So I'm going to use that bone dry. And then the beauty of the UV stuff is that it's not set until you actually hit it with the light. So I can sit there and manipulate this stuff for a little while until I'm ready to hit it with the light, and then I can hit it with the light, and now it's going to set up for me.
Do you have a name for this sculpin?
No, but I do love naming flies.
Yes, the Rio names are quite wonderful.
Patrick and I get more of a kick out of naming flies. There's only been one fly that we've been cut off from using as a name. I think I may have told you that at IFTD years ago, but I'm not going to tell you it again because it wouldn't be appropriate. I mean, it was appropriate, but it might not have been to the right person, so I'm not going to say. Now I'm going to use my favorite tool ever, which anyone who's watched me tie knows that I love using cauterizers. Nice. It kind of trims all the little fuzzy stuff. You could give yourself prison tattoos if you get really bored with it. And it makes your fly look like it's a professional fly. Even if you're a really sloppy tire, you could just clean up all the fuzzies coming off of it. So this guy now is pretty much done. That's the profile of him with the legs, rubber legs coming off. The key with sculpins too is that their legs, their pectoral fins tend to be really, really long. So it's important to get fins that are pretty long on it as well. Otherwise, it looks like it's a short, stumpy guy. And then you want to make sure that you have those gills on them too, because they all have really, really prominent red gills when they're moving around and you could see them. Ours in the Sound have really creamy white belly, but a lot of the sculpin other places don't necessarily have that. So there's the bottom of that
perfect color for where we are. So that's awesome.
Nice. Well, these are super cheap. I mean, if you were to buy a couple of the brushes, then it's just marabou, rabbit strip, and some rubber legs, really. So it makes it pretty easy. You could tie up 1 million of them in different colors, and they fish really, really well.
So we have a question. Will any UV light work, or do you need a certain one for certain resins? And I've had this discussion a lot of times. So what's your thought on that?
So here's my thing on that. The companies that make UV products will tell you need a specific one for their products. You don't. Shocker. They end up, the reason that all of them have all the UV products, like UV Thin, Loon, any of those, they leave like a polymer on the outside. That's that gooey feeling that you can feel on the outside of whatever you use it on. Yeah. And it feels sticky kind of. And the reason some people say I'll take an alcohol swab to remove that or something. I found just taking Sally Hansen's or Hard as Nails or something similar and just coating over that, it works better. Yeah. But then I found out that when you actually have a good enough light, that doesn't really happen. Yeah. You don't get that nearly as much. So the light is usually the best part about it. So far, the best I've found is just the infinity light from Loon, the one that you can keep charging. I just keep it plugged into my computer all day long. And this one is always then super powerful and super charged. Yeah. You could even buy extra batteries if you need to. And that is the best way to do it, is to buck up and buy this one. And then you'll never have to buy another one or batteries or anything like that if you need to.
Yep, we got that at the shop too. I love it.
It's awesome. Do you guys have cauterizers at the shop?
We don't have cauterizers, which I'm going to start asking about.
You're going to need to get those in because somebody's going to want to get them because this is the best tool in the world.
Yeah, Hairline carries them, but you probably can just find them.
Yeah, they're not even expensive. They're like $25 for one. It lasts you forever.
Sweet. I like that.
That
was the thing I'm going to pick up next.
It's totally worth it. The only thing you don't want to do with the cauterizer is you definitely don't want to, you'll know right away if you accident, like if you forget and you put something with acetone or something else like glue or something on it, because it'll blow up a little bit when it hits it. It's a little scary. It's not like gonna start a fire, but it's enough to shock you a little bit. So
Ooh, yeah.
You gotta watch it. And anyone who's watching, please ask questions by all means, because otherwise it's super creepy just me talking the whole time.
Yeah, ask questions.
No one-
I'll ask Brita the questions, and hopefully we'll learn a thing or two.
And there are no questions that are off limits with me, so, which is scary but true.
I'm gonna ask, where did you guide, or what did you do guiding?
So I started guiding in Puget Sound. Started off by just standard like hosting trips and things like that, and then it was just through Avid Angler, and that was sometime after 2010.
Okay, nice.
So yeah.
Did you ever steelhead guide?
I have, yes.
Oh, nice.
That was when there were still steelhead in Washington rivers.
I was gonna say that was probably frustrating even then.
Yeah, it was on. I was the Skagit, the Sauk, the Stilly, and the Skykomish, but mostly the Skykomish. Were most of the trips that I did.
Nice.
It's sad, but
I was gonna say it's a sad situation now.
It is, yeah. Yeah, for those of you that aren't familiar with like the situation with steelhead too, just to say, like we had a cabin that I grew up on where I learned how to fly fish on the Stillaguamish, and that was one of the Washington Big Four original steelhead streams. And that we used to get a steelhead season between my dad, my grandfather, and I, and my uncle in front of our place. And by the time we sold it in 2006-ish, we hadn't gotten one in 2 years.
That is super depressing.
So it's exponentially gone downhill in just 20 years even. Jeez. So
and is that due to I mean, I'm sure it's due to a lot of stuff, but
it's a lot of stuff. Pollution, overfishing, some of the netting is very frustrating to see, but I won't go into that. There's all sorts of situations, management, you name it. Hatcheries and dams are the big ones, right? Two of the biggest ones. Yeah. So it's very frustrating.
For sure. Is there any conservation effort that people can know about that they could?
Yeah, I would. The Wild Steelhead Coalition. Go onto their website and learn up on that, and help to sign anything you can to get those Snake River dams taken down.
Righteous. Yes.
Yeah. Those things block everything. So what we're doing now is we're not doing bucktail. This stuff smells so bad. I don't know if you've ever smelled a bucktail. It smells like poop. Yep. Yeah, good fun. So we're going to go ahead and tie this is going to be a little rainbow trout flatwing. So everyone who knows me knows I love flatwings. They're basically Ken Abrams on the East Coast developed this style of tying that it's stacking feathers perpendicular to the hook shank, one after another, and layering in between with pieces of flashabou. And so what happens is as those feathers move and undulate in the current, they flash at the bends at exactly the right times a normal baitfish would. They're probably the most effective fly you'll ever fish ever, especially out in the saltwater. They work. I've used them in lakes, little chub flatwings, things like that. And it's just fun to create one that looks like a rainbow trout. So we're going to do that.
Take note, pike anglers as well. Got a question. What is your vise?
This is the HMH TRV. I've tied on virtually every vise out there. I tie at work. I'll tie on a Nor vise as well, just because I do furling stuff there too. And that's really the only one that does that well for me. But this TRV has been great for the majority of my tying at home. So to start with, I'm going to take some bucktail, and I hand stack bucktail. I don't ever use a hair stacker. It just doesn't look natural on a bait fish if you have it all like even and choppy on one side. So we call this the back kind of pillow or station. So here we go. And tie that down. cut off some of the excess here. I don't need to cut all of it off perfectly. I'm going to wrap over that a little bit so it doesn't annoy me. Now, one key with flatwings is you don't ever want to tie them with rounded thread. You want thread that's like more of a floss base. If you can find it, Danville's is pretty good. Uni is crap for that. And if you can get ultra thread and it's actually doesn't knot on you coming off the spool, then that's the best one. Legarton's a killer one too. That's a great one if you can find it. And don't use mono thread unless you break your thread and you end up grabbing it like I might do eventually here, because this is like 70 denier. It's pretty small for what I'm doing with it. All right, so now that we've got this kind of platform situated here, we're going to go to the first feather. And the first feather that you want to use is going to be a streamer neck because they're stiffer. So you want something that actually is, because you're going to put it concave, you're going to put it upside down. So instead of making it do that, you want it to do that. And the reason you do that is to keep the other feathers from fouling. So it's a broader feather, it's a stiffer feather, and it keeps the other ones from wrapping around the hook shank on you.
What is two questions. One, what is the hook you're using?
So the hook I'm using is the Airex Trout Predator hook.
What size?
I think it's a 4. I usually tie all my flies on saltwater hooks just because I figure you never know where you'll use them for stuff like this. But this one's such a freshwater specific fly that I was like, whatever. I think it's a 4 that I've got.
Would you use is a B10S a decent one for that?
Yeah, the B10Ss would work really well too. They have this one has a massive hook gape on it. Yeah. Almost obnoxiously massive. So I think a B10S would be a good one. The Gamakatsu SL12S is a great one. Oh, nice. Yeah, there's a lot of good options. So
yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I have a feather here that I've kind of pulled off. I don't know if you can see this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take it and I'm going to pinch off pull backwards and pull off all the little fuzzy parts that were on the end of the feather. Okay, so you're just left with this feather that's all the perfect feather bits instead of that downy fluff at the bottom of it. And I'm going to tie this, hold it right here. I'm going to place it so that where the stem is bare is even with where my thread stopped. And the rest of it is coming out the back. Then what I'm going to do is take my left hand, kind of cradle it with this finger, and use my thumb to hold it down where it needs to be on the top. I'm going to do loose turns. Then I'm going to tighten on the upturn, loose, tighten, because otherwise your feather will spin and you will swear. All right, so when in doubt, pull, pull, oh, another one, pull, we're good. You will know right away if you didn't wrap well, if you didn't tighten on the upturn and do a couple loose wraps, because it will twist on you and then it will be really frustrating. You can glue it till the cows come home and it will still end up twisting on you when you're fishing it if you didn't do it right. So no amount of glue will hold it. If you didn't do it right, make sure you do a good job of gluing it and of tying it in. So I'm going to do this. Having said that, I'm putting glue on. The reason I'm putting glue on is actually not because it's going to help save that feather from twisting. It's to add durability to it a little bit. These are pretty durable flies, but flatwings will actually, if you don't lose them in the sand or in a rock, they'll last you forever. So you want to make sure that you don't end up, having feathers coming out on you. Okay.
I answered this a little bit, but here's a good question. Where can I find a good fly tying vise?
I would go to your local fly shop.
Yeah, that was what I said.
Yep. 100%. Go to your local fly shop, because that way you could go in there and you can explain what you're trying to do with it, what you're planning on tying the most with it, and what is going to, what your budget is. Because I've definitely sold them for years through Avid Angler when I worked there. And there's a lot of good vices that are in every price point. So you don't need to spend a ton. And if you read things online, it seems like you do. So there you go. All right, so now I'm going to go ahead and put down my first bit of Flashabou. I'm going to take 2 pieces, Ken Abrams says it always has to be 2 pieces. So I'm going to go along with what he says. Now here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take them and I'm wrapping it around my thread. So I'm folding it in half around my thread and tying backwards. So I technically have 4 pieces going out the back. And it keeps them from pulling out. I did the same thing with prepping this feather, as you can see. This one we're going to do, this is a standard rooster saddle, and we're going to do it facing down, so concave, like that, normal.
This is
I'm going to do the same exact thing.
Rooster streamer hackle?
This is going to be, yes, it's rooster streamer hackle, but you really need the full neck for it. You cannot use strung feathers for this at all. You want to have a full saddle because what you want to do is do as I say, not as I do, which is measure each one because each feather needs to be slightly longer than the one prior to it or before it. Oh. So it staggers out and back longer. Otherwise, you'll waste a million feathers by pulling them out and then realizing that they aren't longer. It's good to invest in large amounts of hackle.
Yes.
If you go to fly fishing shows, Keo usually has a million of them. Hairline has a bunch of them. East Coast, there's the Stone River, I think it was. Jay Stockard, a bunch of them have them. I would say Wapsie has some really good ones too. The ones that I don't like as much are the ones that are labeled flatwing saddles. And the reason being is that, like, here's the best saddle ever, Ken Abrams RLS saddles. They're killer if your flies are for stripers. Because this length is going to be useless for most stuff for Washington, right? For like smaller stuff. So the stuff that most people don't use for pike and things like that are actually perfect. They're like smaller ones that are great for what we're doing right here. All right, so since we're doing a rainbow, I'm going to do olive next and do another piece or 2 of Flashabou. This is just the lateral scale, the super skinny one. You can mix and match. You could do all of Flashabou stuff. You can do whatever you want. I like Flashabou because it's softer and it moves more. Now I'm going to find an olive feather that's a little bit longer and rip out 3 of them because I just told you not to and I did it anyways because I get bored and lazy with it. That one's too long. That one's a little too long too. There we go. All right, so I'm going to pull off the weird parts there. And we just keep doing the same thing over and over again. Add a drop of glue to this. Seems like a lot of work, but when you're done with it, they're like, it's super nerdy to say, but I can sit there and stare at these things forever. The joke fishing too, when I'm guiding people who have gone with me will tell you that I kind of have to, it's like the Seinfeld with whether or not you're sponge worthy. I have to decide people whether or not they're flatwing worthy. So they have to prove their casting skills before they get thrown a flatwing to try.
Before they throw it into the barnacles.
You got it. Yeah, because people whack them on the rocks constantly and you end up losing a bunch of flies.
Yeah. Rob,
so this time,
you know Rob from the shop, he grew up in New York, so he's all about these too.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah.
So I'm a big fan of dyeing things. So I usually get a bunch of white saddles, and this is one of the ones that I did. Peach is a really good color for both prawns, polychaete flatworms, things like that, and flatwings. But we're going to use it as the rainbow stripe down the middle of the rainbow. So this is also the fun part about flatwings is that you can create the look you're looking for with using different feathers to stack. So you can even do like striped baitfish like dace and such by going from an orange or like yellow flatwing feathers to like a black or 2 in the middle and then going to burnt orange in the top. Lots of options. So that looks good. I'm going to add in green this time.
What do you use to dye those feathers?
So that's the funny thing. A lot of people think you need to use like vineyards or like acid dyes and such, and I've done it. But I'll tell you, when it comes to feathers for baitfish, you don't need a lot of those bright colors. And so I just use RIT.
Okay.
smells like absolute poop in your house.
I've done it. Yeah.
It's like vinegar and dead chickens. It's
Uh-huh.
awful. But it works really well. And then I dye my fingers and
Perfect.
for weeks on end. Okay, so here's that peach feather being tied in now. So what are we up to? 4 feathers now?
Yes.
We're gonna keep going.
2 whites, a olive, and an orange.
Yeah, the more feathers you can put on these things, the more realistic it's gonna look in the water. All right, so, and this time I'm gonna be a little crazy, and I'm gonna add in some of the Senya's Predator Wrap. This is like the gold, olive, black something. I don't know. Maybe you guys know, because you have it in the shop. I don't remember which one this is.
Yeah, it's all. I was gonna ask too. Do you, are you tying those all in one over the top, or just
Yep,
a little bit in front of each other? Okay.
it's one right over the top every time, which makes it so that sometimes it ends up, if you don't have thin, like flat thread that flattens out, it ends up super tall, and then you can't do anymore. So, yeah. All right, next up, we're gonna, now that we've done our little stripe on it, we're gonna do another olive feather. And now we've gotten them longer, so we need a little bit of a longer feather. I'm gonna keep peeling off the little fuzzy parts. These are pretty boring to watch tie until they're done, and then everyone's like, oh, holy crap, I should have watched that better because that looks really cool. So I'm sorry in advance until I get there, but then once I'm done, you're gonna be like, oh shit, oh crap, I need to go back and watch this over again.
Well, it'll be on YouTube, thankfully, so we'll have it saved there.
Oh, good. So everyone will see that I swore on accident.
Perfect.
Yeah. All right, so there's that olive one in there. Okay. Okay, so now we've got 5 feathers in here. And I'm gonna put, I'm gonna do another bit of this speckled stuff in between. Some of the stuff that's really good if you want to add a little bit of bulk too in between feathers, you can actually put some of the squimpish hair, the blends that we talked about the other day.
Yep.
The one that has flash in it too. That one's pretty fun. I folded this around my thread since I don't want to have a bunch of it. I went ahead and cut off some of the shorter pieces of it.
And I know you fish these in the saltwater, but does anyone really fish these for like trout? Or I don't know if I'd want to because it's so nice.
Yeah, so I've done a lot of these, some really, really tiny white ones as like the chub minnow in the lakes, and they've done really well. You could totally fish it swinging it really easily, but I would actually recommend instead to cast upstream with this one and twitch it and retrieve it that way so that they hit the head. The thing with these is that, remember, it's got a super short hook, but the fly itself is long. And the reason being is that if they're going to want it, they're going to hit the head where the eyes are. So it's got to be a fish that's going to commit if you don't do it that way. Okay. So last up, we are going to do, that's what I wanted. So I've got this little bit of a darker greener color.
Did you dye that green?
Yeah, you can tell on some of them. It's like I get lazy midway through and I'm like, oh, it'll be fine. Yeah, looks good to me. Okay, so now I'm going to do this one. In the top one, I'm doing a little bit shorter than the others. And because I still want to get it that tapered body shape. So this is the darkest green of the bunch that I'm tying in. All right, that looks good. Add a drop of glue. Hit it with light. I'll send you up close pictures of these too when I'm done.
Perfect,
So
yes.
that you can actually post those if you want, so people can see what the end result looks like if you can't see it really well on this.
Absolutely. That'd be sweet.
Awesome. Now, what I'm going to do is I've got some Lagarten body braid, and I'm going to take some pink, it's like a shrimp pink color. And this is going to be the braid color that I'm going to use for my body on this. It's just barely going to show through. It's not going to show through a ton, so it's not like a really big deal. But what you want to do is I tie over all of my stems to keep that bulk all the way up to the front, so you don't end up with like this chopped off edge that like abruptly stops.
Yeah.
All right. So I'm going to tie in the pink here. And I'm going to wrap the shank of the hook all the way up to about 1/8 to 1/4 of an inch, more like 1/4 of an inch behind the hook eye. Maybe not. Okay, so I'm here now. Now what I'm going to do is add in, you'll see me digging behind me. I've got drawers back here that are about as organized as the counter in front of me. So I'm glad you guys can't see that. So I'm going to add in a little bit of gray.
The loon bench rings, is that what that is all over?
Oh yeah, these things are the best thing ever. If it wasn't for them, I don't know what I would do. All right, so I'm going to do, and then I have we're going to do some of the squimpish hair for the front, just to give it some bright green. This stuff is the blended. I don't know what color it is. It doesn't say, so I'm sorry. If anyone buys any of this, I recommend you don't remove the little rubber band thing that comes around them. It's a bad idea.
It's like taking EP out of the package.
Oh, yes, 100%. So there's a trick that I do with this stuff. So first I'm going to take and tie in a little bit of bucktail. And this time it's going to be gray because that's what I have in front of me. It's not really going to matter that much because it's going to end up covered up by this other stuff. So actually, you know what I'm going to do is take some of this brown too. All right. So we're going to tie in a little bit of bucktail up front. And that's just going to keep it, it's just going to prop up some of the stuff I'm tying in here. That's all it's meant to do.
What scissors do you use?
I couldn't pronounce them if I tried, but I love them. They're Copter, I think it is, the Italian ones that Hairline stocks.
Okay.
They're awesome. You'll never go back.
Sweet.
They're super fun. I have a bunch of them because I keep accidentally getting the curved ones instead of the straight ones or something like that. It just happens that way, but okay. So I'm tying in now. If you feel comfortable doing, tying it in hollow fly and tying it forward and then pushing it back, you could totally do that at this step. But you'd have to do it before you put in your braid, and I didn't. So there we go. This is just to add a little bit of bulk. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my squimpish hair and I'm actually chopping it in half and hand stacking it so that the middle of it is the longest bit.
For people unfamiliar, and I'm not going to really describe it well, but squimpish, it's almost like a really long craft fur, but only kind of.
Yeah, it's hard to explain. And it's supposed to be tapered on one end. it's not on most of it, but you can use, if you have any of these, this is the only thing I would use this for generally, except to cut people's hair maybe. These are like the thinning shears. So they, it tapers things and makes it so it's staggered and not necessarily flat. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this, I'm going to pull out a little bit of it. And I'm going to put that in right over where I tied in the bucktail. And I'm going to kind of take my thumb and do that so that it kind of pushes it around. Now I'm going to take this bit and I'm going to fold it back over. Okay, so now we have this wing up top. Oh, came undone on me. All right, so now we've got this wing. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn it upside down for a second and we're going to tie in the throat. And for the throat on this, there's a few options. I'm going to go ahead and use some of the, one of my favorite things is the minnow mix, the UV dub minnow mix. It's like ice dub minnow mix.
Oh, cool.
It's like ice 343, I think it is the code, which is scary. So it ends up automatically in like an 1.5 inch segment whenever you pull it out of the package. So if you hand stack it in your hand and then pinch it in the middle, put it up to the throat where you're tying it in, then wrap, fold it over, and tie it down. It's always the perfect length for every baitfish throat you could ever do.
Sweet.
Super easy. Next and finally, the spine, you want to make sure you have a good spine on it. And if you ask Ken Abrams, he'll tell you that all of them need to have peacock for the spines of them.
Need to.
It's just really hard to find good peacock, though.
These days, yeah.
Yeah.
Does it break off pretty quick on you with fish?
Yes and no. It's not nearly as quick to break off as you'd think. I just, every time, like, it looks great, but then if I sit and let the fly drop for even a second, it just sits there and hangs out like away from the rest of the material. So I always feel like it looks weird, but I know that I need it. So I don't know. So I'm going to fold back over itself to lock it. I mean, they probably chop it off or chomp it off before they'd actually pull it out, but whatever. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to whip finish and then we're going to put on eyes.
Someone just said, I am beginning to understand why people have to be flatwing worthy.
Yeah. These things, they do last forever if you do a good job with them. And again, in the water, the second you see one in the water, you will never go back. Trust me.
I'm going to try these out myself.
It's insane. The movement on them. My old boss at Avid Angler, he used to teach the fly fishing school in the Cape in Massachusetts, the Orpheus School.
Oh, yeah.
And he brought this technique back with him and then started teaching it. And you could go there and fish the sound with like every fly you've got. And he would come in and just slay every fish behind you. And it was like, you're fishing a white fly, he's fishing a white flatwing. It's insane the difference they make. It's worth it. So I'm going to put some eyes on this guy real quick. Actually, I don't like the way that eye looks. I'll put on a different eye on this fly.
Have to have the right one.
Yeah, I'm really bad about this. I've been known for like, there was a day where I was walking around, I was tying squid flies, and I was walking around the store and I kept having people look at me weird. And I was like, what is going on? And I had this massive squid eye, like right on my chest for like the entire time walking around the grocery store.
Whoops.
So yeah, it was a little weird. Okay. So we're going to just do this one. My favorite to use are the living eyes in ice. And this one isn't going to be as pretty because it's going to be the earth color, I think, or not earth. It's one wind or something. I don't know what the ridiculous name is for this one. It's just not the silver one that's as pretty.
No.
So I'm sorry if I ruined it.
Totally.
Always make sure that your eyes are straight, because otherwise you're going to be like me and you think they look straight and they're not, and then you're screwed and you'll never look at the fly the same again. Lastly, because I used white thread and I'm weird this way.
That's olive?
There. Give them a little bit of an olive nose. When in doubt, the best thing you could ever get and add to your tying kit is a good Copic marker, 5 or 10. You can find those for cheap on like eBay too, because a lot of art students end up with them and then don't use them. And they last forever, so it's worth it.
We don't sell them at the shop, but there's an art store in Durango that does sell them, for those who are wondering.
Yeah, they're pretty awesome. Okay, so now I hit it with that UV stuff again. What I'll do is then I'll go over it with a thicker UV product, like UV thin, to create more of like the actual head shape instead of like the soaking in head shape that I've got going right now. And that will give it more of a taper of a face. I'll do the throat on this one too. This is flow, so it's way thinner than the one I normally would use. And then I'll hit it with UV, or like this hard as hull or hard as nails. Or so this guy, I'm gonna hold it up and see if you guys can see. That's the way that the end product with that guy. As you can see, there's that peach color showing through. There's the lighter olives, there's the white. So as that flashes and moves, it's going to flash this stuff. So you don't want to cut your Flashabou until you're done. And then you want it to exceed about an inch beyond the longest feather, so that you have that last kick out when it's kind of undulating in the current. Mm-hmm. And that's that dead on. And you can see the little bits of the dark speckle in there as well.
That's sweet.
We could have done it way longer too. You can end up doing it with more bucktail on like a 3/0 or a 4/0 for pike and such too.
Oh, wow.
Which would be really, really easy to do. You just need more saddles.
Oh, for sure. How much? Oh, yeah, we're about to wrap it up here. I'm gonna, because we got about 8 minutes left. We got a hard stop at 6:30, 5:30 your time.
Is there other questions at all or anything?
Couple questions. Just people are kind of watching. Not too many questions yet. I'll ask what do you design for? This might be a weird question, but what do you design for Rio products?
It's not a weird question. Okay. So most of the stuff that I design is a lot of the saltwater stuff, and then a lot of the ones with Rios in front of it. Most of them I did, not all of them. And then I'm a big fan of the streamers, so I love the Pocket Rocket was mine. The Extrovert, I did the what else? The Gold Jigger and the Soccer Mom. Uh-huh. Those ones are big ones. If you haven't tried the Gold Jigger, that one's awesome.
We brought the Gold Jigger in this year, so
it's a good fly.
Yeah.
The Soccer Mom, is a really good one too. She's the best friend of the Gold Jigger, so
standard. Obviously. Yeah. Sorry, I'm just telling people this will be saved on YouTube, so you can reference it again. Again, tomorrow we have our event at 10 o'clock at Santa Rita Park. I'm trying to think of a few questions people might have before we cut it off. What could you use that flatwing for as far as what fish would you target, or could you conceivably target?
I would throw that in the Missouri. I would throw it in any big lake or any big reservoir, even too, if there's bigger fish in there holding over.
We have some Vallecito and Lemon in Navajo are great reservoirs.
Any place where they dump in a bunch of little fingerlings, this would be a killer one to throw in too.
San Juan.
Yeah, that would be great. Otherwise, I would fish it. Yeah, if you're gonna sit there and cast upstream and twitch it and retrieve it that way, then any of the streams with big fish in it would be an awesome one. And then obviously you could even throw it in the saltwater too. Those fish will eat it. Looks like a perch for out there.
I know it's a lot of work for something, but has anyone fished with for like GTs with something like that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's Aussie Fly Fisher. I think it is. There's one of the guys that does a lot of GT fishing. He does tie flatwings and uses them quite often and gets everything from golden trevally to GTs to everything else. People who I actually like, every once in a while, I'll tie a GT flatwing for them or two and send them with them.
They're probably not too hard. I mean, as much as you put in there.
It's super easy to do.
And not hard to
Yeah, because you finally get to use the longer feathers.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so it's really fun. It's just creating bulk then at that point.
For
so
sure.
that they push water.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Do you use other stuff
fun.
for the, other than squimfish for the top wing?
Yeah, I'll do bucktail. I'll do, what else? Usually it's bucktail. I'll do bear hair, if you will, legally. Yeah.
Got a question. If tying in faux fur, how long would you have the fibers? About 3 to 4 inches?
Probably. Yeah, I would say that would be about right.
And I think one guy's asking, will we catch fish tomorrow?
I'm going to say
maybe.
I don't know. Are you guys putting flies on for tomorrow?
It's going to be a lot of instructional.
Or is it casting?
So it's casting at the park. There's the river there, so we'll see. That remains to be seen. Maybe Tom will catch there's betas coming out.
The betas still?
Oh yeah, that's actually been pretty good. Betas, some midges.
Okay. Overcast day, you're set with betas probably.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have Mother's Day caddis over here, so it's caddis time now, and squallas. A lot of squallas.
Is there a lot of trout rivers up there? I know there's not as many. Or
the Yakima. It's only blue ribbon trout stream in Washington, so it gets everyone and their grandmother there every time. And then we get the bikini hatch all afternoon in the summer.
Nice.
So that's fun. Yep. It's pretty productive in all areas, I guess.
That's good. It sounds like the Midwest, actually.
Yeah, probably. Pretty much. Yeah.
I think that's about it for questions.
Awesome.
Again, thanks, Brita. We appreciate it. Thanks for joining us, and we will see everyone tomorrow. Thank you guys. Yeah, 10 a.m. tomorrow at Santa Rita Park. Take care.
Thanks for having me.